everyone, and a very warm welcome to this special webinar, which looks to outlining how you might use Zoom as an integrated platform for progressing distant learning and teaching and staff meetings and so on in an easy to reach way during what is now a prolonged period of uncertainty and apprehension for all of us. The impetus for arranging this webinar came from school communications in both of our regions. Leaders responding and outlining clearly the priority supports desired and the key challenges that you're all facing at the moment. It was interesting to note that many of the supports and the challenges outlined were the same, and that while schools are dealing with, as they always do, their own particular needs and challenges, there is a great deal of crossover between schools at the moment. So I suppose as leaders and teachers, the pressures you're presently experiencing are shared by many others. I would like to thank very much our partners, Leo, Shane and the IMS team for engaging with us in the last couple of weeks, giving so generously of their time and adopting a model which is an education-centred approach to using Zoom, bearing in mind some of the complex challenges that apply to that landscape, such as GDPR, security, child protection, content, and so on. And also I'd like to extend our thanks to Ava, our other panelist, who as a principal of a large primary school in Limerick has managed to incorporate Zoom as a really successful teaching and learning tool in a made-to-measure way for his teachers and students. I would like to say finally that your efforts at navigating and negotiating student learning and student well-being have been outstanding. Schools and teachers are also frontline heroes, albeit at a very safe distance. There is still a programme of work to be done. We would like you to reach out for supports wherever you can get them as you continue to serve your students. We want you also to place value on your own well-being and that of your teaching communities. I would encourage you to take baby steps rather than giant leaps, and rest assured in the knowledge that your best efforts at the moment are absolutely good enough. And so I might hand you over to my colleague David from Monaghan Education Centre, who will take you through the format for this webinar over the next hour or so.
Agus bailí gatainna as we're láras an seo aniu, we're láras ó cíanamh mar atá go hiondúis na léanta seo. Just to welcome everybody for their presence with us today, albeit remotely, as is the practice of the environment that we currently find ourselves in. Just to echo Aideen's sentiments there in terms of teachers and their response to the environment, the new reality that we find ourselves in, and I think it's a phenomenal testament to the moral purpose that underpins their profession, that teachers have been adaptive and reflexive in the response to this crisis, with the core of that response being student learning, student development and student well-being. So it's been really heartening and enlightening to see that moral purpose manifest itself in the responses that the Education Centre have had over the past number of weeks to the crisis, but also your engagement today, which is technically still your school holidays, and to have in the region of 150 participants in a CPD event during that period, well, it speaks volumes. And just to echo Aideen's thanks for Eva Rodí Príomhaide on Móscoil Limnach. Eva's generosity of time, his generosity of experience, and his openness in the sharing of his experience in his school with teachers nationally, again speaks volumes of his professionalism and his integrity and his commitment to teaching and learning, which is at the core of all our work. Just to give you some insight into the format of our webinar as we proceed today, I'm firstly going to hand over to Leo Colgan. Leo works with Integrated Media Solutions in Limerick, again, who have been most generous in their commitment to, I suppose, facilitating schools in their hour of need for remote teaching and learning. Like teachers, they've been reflexive and adaptive and responsive to the current situation, in that education is a new sphere for them, but they recognise the need and the gap that was there to be filled, and they were excellent in doing that with us through our colleague in the Education Centre Tralee, Terry O'Sullivan. So that connection has been very valuable to us in Monaghan, Cavan and Louth and Meath, but also nationally as we go ahead. So Leo's going to take us through some of the features of Zoom and maybe address some of the issues that have come to light recently in the media, and maybe put our minds at ease regarding some of those. And then he's going to look at obviously some of the features that we can use educationally within our classrooms, within our school settings, and hopefully that teachers can take away some practical evidence from Leo's presentation as to how Zoom may be of use and of benefit to schools, staffs and students as we go forward. Then obviously we're going to tap into Eva's experience, and he's going to talk about how he has integrated Zoom into his teaching and learning plan within his school in Limerick, a rather large primary school, and how it has benefited in the current crisis, but also maybe how it will benefit when things, please God, return to normal. And then finally we'll take a question and answer session at the end, whereby people can have an opportunity to engage in, I suppose, a very flexible fashion again, whatever issues that you may pick up on throughout the course of the presentation. So we want it to be interactive, and we want people to jot down some notes as we go through it as to what issues that they may encounter or obstacles they may encounter, and through the benefit experience of the panel, hopefully we'll be able to address some of those questions. So I'm going to hand over to Leo now, and he will take us through on a tour of the Zoom platform and its benefits to us as school teachers and school leaders.
Many thanks, David and Aideen, for your kind words. We're only too happy to facilitate this webinar today. Just before I begin, everyone in the audience, you are using Zoom now. You're in our webinar. And a little bit of housekeeping. We're going to run some polls during this webinar just to get an idea of your usage and your comfort and what you think of Zoom. So as you can see, there's a poll just come up in front of you. If you can choose your answer. And it's a great feature of the Zoom webinar that we can get some live information. That'll give me an idea as well of how proficient the audience are in using Zoom. Okay, that's great. Okay, so Shane, my colleague in the background, can publish the results. So we can see that 63% of you have used Zoom before and 38% of you haven't. So that gives us a very good indication of who's in the audience today. So why are we here today? Well, IMS are a company that offer managed broadband and video conferencing solutions, mostly to the hospitality sector. We enable video conferencing in meeting rooms throughout the hotels of Ireland and beyond. We also do some schools, and we have enabled managed Wi-Fi systems and broadband systems in various schools. The reason we are here today is because of Zoom. Zoom is a video conferencing tool that we started using in IMS about 2 years ago. The reason we use it because we had, I guess, trial and errored with several different platforms, among them Skype, Skype for Business, Microsoft Teams, Cisco WebEx, Google. We had tried a number of different platforms, and Zoom, we settled on Zoom because, frankly, it was the easiest to use with the best features. So what I'm going to show you today is the potential of Zoom as a teaching tool, how to set up Zoom securely, what the best practice is. And again, as David mentioned, there has been some press around Zoom, and I'll explain a little bit about that. And also to enable people to avail of the incredible Zoom offer that they have afforded us. So just to put your minds at ease, we're not looking for anything here. We are just playing our part, I guess, in these difficult circumstances. We see my own children, I see my own children struggle at home in the lead up to the Easter break. Their school was adopting Teams, and I could see that they struggled in certain elements of that. And I approached the school, of which I'm a member of the Parents' Council, a secondary school in Limerick, and I suggested that they integrate Zoom with Teams. Don't throw out Teams, but integrate Zoom with Teams. And it's proven very successful. And we had our first Parents' Council meeting on Teams, and subsequently a Board of Management meeting on Zoom, and subsequently a Board of Management meeting on Zoom. So what Zoom are offering here is that they will afford every school in Ireland free licensing for a 6-month period to get us through this period of crisis. What IMS are offering is to set up every school with Zoom. We can show your teachers how to record lessons and send to students through other platforms, such as Google and Aladdin and Seesaw. We'll show the teachers how to integrate Zoom with Teams and use it with Google Classroom. And we'll show your teachers how to use Zoom to teach live lessons. For today, what we're going to do is we're going to show you just the basic features, how to set up Zoom. So what is Zoom? We look at the basic uses and features, how to sign up, how to get started, how to schedule a meeting, how to run a meeting, and how to share some content. So what is Zoom? So for those of you who haven't used Zoom before and aren't sure, I'm sure you've heard of it in the last few weeks, whether it's to do with families having birthday parties on Zoom, whether it's having table quizzes on Zoom, or whether it's just family catching up. It's adopted a global usage at the moment. What we see it is in this sphere is suitable for one-to-one meetings, staff meetings, SEN meetings, Board of Management meetings, and in particular, we reference the CPSMA guidance note in relation to video conferencing of Board of Management meetings during this crisis, and it highlights and endorses Zoom as being one of the platforms that can be used. We also, you'll hear from Aver how he's using it for his staff meetings, and then we're looking at ways of meeting with other principals, committee meetings. I ran a parents' council meeting, so it has all these tools at its disposal. Also, you can record meetings, so you can have pre-recorded meetings sent out to students, and you can use it as live teaching. The other avenues you could go down are Zoom rooms, which is this, in effect, a meeting room where you actually have a setup where you have a screen and a camera and speakers, and you can bring people into your meeting. Very, very useful for Board of Management meetings when people can't attend, they can dial in from remote. And then Zoom webinars, of which you are partaking now, where you can only see the panel, but you can send in questions and answer. You can send in questions. You'll see at the bottom of your screen, if you click on Q&A, you can actually ask live questions. And we have some people in the background moderating those questions. And we'll go through those Q&As at the end. So you're actually partaking in a webinar right now. So why use Zoom? I guess the reason we use Zoom is because it's the best out there. It's fully integratable with things like Microsoft Teams and Google Classroom. It's the industry leader for online teaching. The audio and video is probably what sets it out apart from all the others in terms of quality. It's very simple, one click to join. You'll have seen that today by joining this webinar by clicking on the link. This is crucial. It requires lower bandwidth than the other platforms. So for instance, if you've ever had a meeting over WebEx or Skype, you'll find a lot of glitches, and that's to do with the bandwidth required to run a video or audio meeting. And finally, it's highly supported. The resources that are made available by Zoom are second to none through their website. So Zoom, it's top of the charts. This is the most recent app charts. As you can see, Zoom Cloud Meetings is way out in front. Microsoft Teams is there. Google Classroom is there. But Zoom is really the top of the charts because of how easy it is to use. It's easy to manage. It's a tool that's easy to teach, easy to control, easy for teachers. And some pupils might not be happy about it, but it's easy for pupils as well. This was published yesterday by Bloomberg, just to give you an indication of the usage of Zoom in relation to the other competitors. So Microsoft Teams and Google Meet would be closest, Skype as well, Google Hangouts, Skype for Business. These, as you can see from this, it's just under 3 million daily downloads. It's quite incredible. And you can see since this pandemic was declared, it's a steep curve for Zoom, whereas the others are climbing very gradually. So as Bloomberg announced yesterday, there's only one winner in the work from home meeting app wars. So the elephant in the room, I guess, are the security issues. So I'm sure you've all heard about these security issues in the past, that people have been jumping into meetings, that they've been sharing content that shouldn't be shared. And it has been quite a worry. But just to put it in some context, Zoom has grown from 10 million users to in excess of 200 million users in the space of 3 months. In the whole of 2019, Zoom added 1.19 million users. In the first month of 2020, it added 2.22 million users. It's now in excess of 200 million users and climbing close to 250 million users. So for a company to grow that quickly, it was going to have some teething problems. And primarily it was down to the fact that up until now, Zoom was used in the corporate industrial environment and wasn't really used for home use. So things that they had, certain security features that corporate environments would take for granted, weren't being taken for granted by people who just started to use it in their homes. And mainly that is around implementing passwords on your meetings, or implementing what we call waiting rooms. And these waiting rooms and passwords ensure that nobody can get into your meeting. And I'm sure you've heard of the term Zoom bombing, and that's when people would enter in a random meeting number when they went in to join a meeting. They'd enter in a random meeting number, which was a 9-digit number, and they would appear into somebody's meeting if it wasn't secure. And that was Zoom bombing, and they'd share inappropriate content. But we're here today to tell you that Zoom is as safe as houses. If you close the door in your house, it's safe. It's the very same as a meeting. Don't leave your meeting open and nobody can get in. And it's very simple to implement. IMS and their clients haven't had these Zoom bombing and security issues because in the corporate environment, we have already implemented meeting IDs, our meeting passwords, and waiting rooms. So we want to rest assured that there is no issue with Zoom and they've acted very quickly. So the Zoom reaction to this bad press, to be honest, I'm amazed at just how fast they reacted. The CEO is Eric Wan. He holds a weekly webinar. There was one yesterday evening. It's open to everyone who wants to attend. And you actually get to ask him live Q&A and he answers. It's fantastic. They've effectively addressed all the security concerns. They've changed their default settings. They've changed basic features within the meeting space. They've made the meeting ID invisible so nobody can see. I'm sure you saw Boris Johnson share a screenshot of his meeting and he was highly condemned by the cybersecurity people because his meeting ID showed in the photograph. So Zoom have made the meeting ID invisible, so they've Boris Johnson proofed it. They've added an additional security icon in the meeting, and they've even gone as far as publishing a white paper on security, which you'll find at the Zoom website. So in terms of GDPR and privacy, they've come out very strong. They've updated their privacy policy as recently as March 29th to be more clear and transparent about what data is collected, and that just to clarify that they don't sell the user data, they've never sold it in the past, and they've no intention of selling it going forward. They've brought out some very clever infographics to show 10 tips on how to create and make your meetings more secure. In terms of education, they've rolled out a guide for administrators on setting up a virtual classroom, how to better secure their virtual classrooms, and how to set up and they've also set up a dedicated education privacy policy. They've also gone as far as for education users, they've set up waiting rooms by default, and they've also made sure that teachers are the only ones who can share content in a meeting by default. So they have actually published an additional privacy policy for education on their website as well. So I guess having addressed the security issues, and we'll see the waiting rooms in practice a little bit later on. And I'll demonstrate how they work. The next issue that I just want to address prior to going on to look at the features of Zoom are around the integration with systems that you may already be using in your schools. And this is something that when I first spoke to the school my kids go to, they were concerned with. They had gone down the road of investing in Microsoft Teams. And as someone said to me, when they were trying to make teaching over Microsoft Teams work, it's like learning to walk on a broken foot. You're only as good as the tool that you know. So what I was able to show them is that it's not Zoom or Teams, it's both. Where Teams is very good is assigning coursework and interacting with the children, but where Zoom is great is audio and video. The combination of both is very powerful. So you can see here, we use Microsoft Teams internally in IMS, and this is my Teams window, and I have my Zoom control within my Teams window. So it's fully integrated with an add-in plug. When I click on that, I see my Zoom screen inside the Microsoft Teams. So I just want to reassure you, if you've gone down the road to Microsoft Teams, this is to complement Microsoft Teams. Zoom or Google Classroom. Again, Google Classroom has its benefits, and there's some very good resources online to show you. I've added a couple here to show you the difference between Zoom and Google Meet, for example. But what we're suggesting is that you don't throw out Google, and Aver's going to speak about his experiences with Google and G Suite later on. We would recommend a combination of both. And here we see in Google Classroom how we can integrate by adding a Zoom link into a live class. Just at this juncture, we're going to have another little poll. Shane, if you want to run another poll. Just having spoken about the security elements, just wanted to gauge how you guys are feeling now that you know that Zoom is safe. Okay, well that's cooking away there. So getting started with Zoom. So I'm briefly going to show you how to get started with Zoom, and then I'm going to hand you over to Aver, who's going to talk you through his perspective from primary school. And then we're going to come back and then look at some more Zoom features, in particular for teachers. Okay, so getting started. I guess the offer that Zoom are extending means that IMS will be onboarding any of you in terms of using Google or using Zoom for your schools in collaboration with your teams or your Google Classroom, whatever you're using, or your Aladdin or your Seesaw. But this is how you would, if you had a desktop or laptop computer, you just go to Zoom, the Zoom website, and you click download, and it's that simple. And this is what you would see. This is called the Zoom client, and this is your window when you open Zoom on your computer. So it's very, very easy to use. New meeting, you join a meeting that you know the meeting ID, you schedule a meeting, or you just share your screen if you're in an environment in a Zoom room. The beauty of Zoom, again, is you can use it on any device, so you're not restricted on a laptop or a computer. You can use it on any device, your iPad, your Android, your tablet, your phone, any portable device. And in that instance, you would go to the App Store, you download the app and click Get. And then you get Zoom in. And this is what it would look like on your device. So this is what it looks like on my iPhone. Okay, and again, these are the four key prominent features when you want to start a meeting, schedule a meeting, join a meeting, or share your screen. So you're up and running with Zoom then. So you can work anywhere with anyone on any device. You can start a meeting or join a meeting on the go anywhere from any device, and you can share your content to anyone on any device as well. So when you schedule a meeting, you would hit the schedule button, and this is the screen that would come up. Before Zoom made meeting passwords by default, you would have to tick this button. It's now ticked, and you can enter in whatever password you want for your meeting. And then you click on scheduled in Outlook or else your Google Calendar, whichever you're using. And this is what it would look like when it goes up, when it opens in Outlook and is sent out. You'll see this is the link, and you click on the link and you join the meeting. If there's a meeting password, in this case, you'll be prompted to enter in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then once you schedule the meeting, it'll then sit here in your calendar, and you just go to it and click start when you're ready to go. So it's as simple as that. So this is what you see when you start a meeting. I'm the only one in the meeting, in this particular meeting, and I can manage the participants as they enter. I can invite participants from a meeting as well that it wasn't even scheduled. And this is the setup. You have your mute, your stop video, and your security, your manage participants, chat, share screen, record breakout rooms and reactions. So after Ava has spoken, I'm going to go into a little bit of detail on how you can control a meeting using those functions. But just in terms of the security that we spoke about, this is an added feature in the last 2 weeks. So what they've done is they've moved the things that were most prominent in the press. They've actually put them into a little icon and created a menu. It's important to note that these features were already in Zoom. They just weren't on by default. So they've jumped that to a prominent feature in the bar. They've also, as I mentioned, removed the meeting ID from view, so all you can see is Zoom and the Zoom logo at the top. So this is what the security menu looks like. So you can lock your meeting once you're in. You can enable a waiting room, and you might notice that this is grayed out. And the reason it's grayed out is because you can set that at company level on the corporate account to be non-changeable. So you can enforce waiting rooms. So this is what we would suggest doing when we're setting up your school, that we would enable waiting room to be non-changeable. The other things that teachers were most concerned about were allowing participants to share the screens, allowing participants to chat, allowing participants to rename themselves funny names on their windows. And they've brought those to the fore so that it's easy to turn those features on or off. So they also, a couple other things here when setting up your meeting. A good feature is to be able to mute participants on entry, so that if you have 30 people clambering into a room, that they don't all have the dog barking and the background noise in the houses, and that they all make noise at one time. You can mute everyone on entry so that when they want to speak, you unmute them. You can control it so that the participants can't unmute themselves, they can't rename themselves. And you can also play an enter and an exit chime when someone enters your meeting. Again, as I explained, the enable waiting room is by default on, and the lock meeting. So you can see that a few of those have they were in the advanced features and have been brought out into the security menu. So after Ava has spoken, I'm going to show you a little bit on how to manage a classroom, how to use waiting rooms, how to use the audio and video controls, the sharing controls, and the breakout rooms. So this is a typical meeting with multiple users, and this is I'm sure you've seen these types of photos posted on Facebook and all other social media platforms and LinkedIn, showing people having a great time and parties and stuff. But this is what a typical classroom would look like. So I'm going to take a break for the moment. I'm going to hand you over to Ava, who's going to speak about his experiences, I guess, from a primary school perspective. Over to you, Ava.
Gurmagad Leo, Di Eva Chorda, agus Tassul Gum Gul Gatan a Gov Gumag, School should be Bwintan of us and webinar show. As Aideen and David mentioned, Ava O'D is my name, and I'm principal of An School, which is a school law in Gaelga in Limerick City. We have a staff of over 35 teachers and a pupil base of over 600 pupils. I'm in my second year as principal in the school, so I'm reasonably new to the job. I won't say I'm a rookie, but I'm like every other school, to be honest, in the country. We're struggling with elements of distance learning at the moment. I used Zoom myself for the first time 4 weeks ago. Hadn't ever heard of it before that. I'm not an expert on it, but I am learning, and I'm here, I suppose, to share my experience with you for the next few minutes. We are a Google school, so we recently started integrating G Suite with Aladdin and Apple devices in our school. We currently use Aladdin to send homework home each week on a Sunday night, and we also created class email addresses for parents and pupils to submit homework to the teachers via those email addresses, marhampla@moscow.ie and so on. I'm lucky, I suppose, in that I have a staff with a wide range of abilities and interests, and I asked the STEM team and the staff to have a look at all the various platforms that were out there and the software that's available to see what, I asked them to come back basically and recommend to us what's the best way for us to communicate with our staff, pupils and parents. If this COVID-19 break from school turns out to be a 2 to 3 month break, we felt we needed something extra. So they had a look at Aladdin and Gmail, which we're currently using, and they also looked at Google Classroom, Zoom, Coder Dojo, Seesaw, WebEx, Study Ladder, everything really, but like I say, I worked with them, I suppose, because I said to them we wanted something that would complement what we are already doing via Aladdin and G Suite. Aladdin and G Suite are working really, really well for us, and we had no intention of throwing them out. Aladdin gives us consistency across the whole school because it's a one single platform for communicating with parents, but we wanted something that would offer us something extra on top of those that would enable us as a staff, first of all, to be able to collaborate and to meet and possibly even teach online going forward. We tried Zoom and Google Meet for our first staff meetings in week 1, and we just found Zoom to be much more reliable. It worked a lot better for teachers who had poor Wi-Fi, and it also offered more functionality and features. Even I tried it for the first meeting with our senior management team of 8 teachers, and there's 5 of those who were, I suppose, at the latter stages of their career, and I figured if I could get all of those guys online for the first meeting, and if that worked for us, well, then we had chosen the right one, and it did. None of those, and by their own admission, they're not very IT savvy, but they found it very easy to work with and had no problem logging into the meeting. We also chose Zoom, I suppose, because we felt it offered us the opportunity to collaborate and record audios and videos and share slides and record lessons going forward, and even it'll allow us to facilitate live lessons if we choose to use that going forward. 8 of our teachers, we started out as pro account users on Zoom. That was thanks to the guys in IMS, and this allowed teachers then to collaborate amongst themselves and have their own meetings without me being there. We had a staff meeting then with all 35 teachers online at the same time, and it worked really, really well. The breakout facility that Leo has spoken about is a fantastic feature for staff meetings, or even going forward to have pupils collaborating if we so wish to use it. Zoom also offers the facility to have more than 100 people online at any one time, and that could be useful for us going forward, because one of our big concerns in our school is our 80+ 6th class pupils who we have to prepare for secondary school in September, and it's very hard to do that via email. We need some sort of a way of interacting with them if we're not going to get to see them before the end of the summer. I suppose, to summarize it briefly, I mean, since starting out with Zoom 4 or 5 weeks ago, we have used it since to record video messages and mini lessons where the teachers would have collaborated, 4 or 5 teachers online recording a meeting that they had on Zoom. One group recorded a 10-minute lesson, and as part of the lesson they showed their own faces for the first minute, but the rest of the lesson was just showing a PowerPoint to the pupils and explaining how they would embark on a project, and they used the whiteboard feature as well. I used it myself. I recorded a 4-minute Easter message on Zoom, and I sent the 4-minute message to the whole school via Aladdin. And the beauty with Zoom is you can record the message or the lesson to the cloud, so it's not using up any gigabytes on Aladdin. And I recorded the Easter message and sent it to the whole school, and I got fantastic feedback from all the parents in the school, just saying how delighted the kids were to see one of the teachers' faces, albeit it was my face they saw. But it just really worked well, and to be honest, it's something I'm going to use going forward. Instead of sending a letter home to parents maybe once a term, to send a little video message. It's far more effective, I think, So a lot of my teachers are already using Zoom in lots of different ways, and they're looking now to use it in terms of going live with Zoom going forward. And that's something that, now that I know how to do it securely, thanks to Leo's presentation, that's something I'm going to support them with going forward. We're already using Zoom to integrate, as I said, what we're doing with G Suite and Aladdin. We can get pupils live on Zoom, or we can send home recordings, and we can choose to do that by setting up the pupils with their own email addresses, school-based email addresses, or we can use the parents' email addresses by getting them to opt in, if you like, and choose to be a part of these lessons. We're going to follow all the security steps that have been outlined there by IMS, and we're only going to allow registered users into those live lessons, so obviously we will make it secure. The key for us is that our teachers are pro account users on Zoom, and thereby that allows them to be able to work collaboratively with everybody in the staff. The next step, like I said, is for us to go live, and we'll pilot that with our 6th class hopefully next week, and see how that works, because they're the group we're most concerned about, I suppose, at the moment. The functionality and the multiple uses of Zoom is what has impressed us most about it. We have used it for staff and for management meetings. We had our Easter staff party on Zoom on the Friday of the holidays, and we had a scavenger hunt and played a game of countdown as part of it, and it was great fun and great for morale on staff. Our staff meetings are very, very effective on Zoom. One of my colleagues has joked with me since that she said to me she said that when we go back to school that I'm going to continue using Zoom for my staff meetings, because she said to me, Ever, it's a great way for you to be able to mute the whole lot of us at the same time and make decisions even faster. So, you know, it does really work, you know. Another example is our Parents Association. We had a fun bingo quiz lined up for before Easter, and we had a few €1,000 collected online through Aladdin, but the event, of course, couldn't go ahead. And they're thinking about even having a bingo quiz on Zoom to try and run the event, you know. So I suppose, in summary, the key benefits and the must-dos that I would say to you as part of considering Zoom going forward: don't use Zoom in a way where you think it's going to replace your Microsoft or your Gmail or your G Suite. Add it to your G Suite or to your Microsoft, and doing that, Zoom is a fantastic way to communicate and to collaborate. And for you as a principal, if you're a principal, it's a great way for you to bring your staff with you and for you to be able to check in with them on a weekly basis as well. Zoom will complement what you do with Aladdin and G Suite. It's a really, really powerful tool for connecting with pupils and staff and parents. Once you adhere to the security features and don't allow pupils to share screen and don't make your colleagues co-hosts, then it works really well. For me, like I say, it's a great way for me to look after the well-being of my staff, because I can check in with them on a regular basis. We have started small with it, and that's what I'd advise you to do. Let your staff have meetings on Zoom first and let them build up their own, if you like, comfortable, allow them to be comfortable with using Zoom before you even consider using it as a tool to engage with pupils. Then maybe start like we did. We started recording mini lessons before we even considered going live with it. But certainly take baby steps. Get the IT teachers, the IT savvy teachers in your school, if you can, to lead this out, because they're the ones who will drive this on for you if you feel it's a platform you want to use. And of course, always reach out for help. The guys in IMS and your education directors are always there to support you with it. But like I say, start small. It's certainly something that will work for anything you want to do communication-wise in your school going forward. And you know, get comfortable with it yourselves as well first before taking it any further. And after that, it's just a case of seeing where your Zoom journey takes you, I guess. So that's it from me, Leo.
Many thanks, Ever. That was great. That was really useful. I hope you guys found that as interesting as I did. So we're just going to have a look now at some of the tools of Zoom that we can use for teaching. So what you can see here is this is the bar that we briefly looked at when setting up a meeting earlier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the functionality and just show you just how easy it is to use. Okay, so one of the things that you can do when you're setting up your Zoom is you can choose a virtual background. Now, I'm sure you've seen these virtual backgrounds for those of you who have used Zoom before. They're important in the teaching environment, I guess, when teachers have sort of aired concerns about pupils seeing their houses, seeing their living environments. So a virtual background is very easy to use. Beside the stop video, you can click on the arrow and it will say choose virtual background, and you can choose any picture you want. There are some default ones there that you can choose from, but you can choose, as you can see Shane here, he was definitely not at the Cliffs of Moher, and the Cliffs of Moher never looked like that, I don't think. So he had a filter on it as well. And Earl here, my other guinea pig, he was not in a Manhattan style New York apartment. So that's just to give you an idea, but I do think it's important from a security point of view that teachers know how to turn on virtual backgrounds, and it's very easy to use. So managing, when you're in the meeting, when you want to manage participants, so the waiting rooms really is a tool that is probably the most important in terms of a secure setting. And this is just to show you how a waiting room would look and how you would operate it. So a waiting room is essentially what it is. It's a virtual waiting room. It does exactly what it says on the tin. It lets people wait to come in. And in this example, I'm on my own here in the meeting, and there's one person in my waiting room. So Patrick is in my waiting room, and the options I have is to admit him, remove him, or message him to say, come back later or something like that. So this is when the meeting progresses. There's now 4 of us in the meeting. And I can see from my participants menu on the right hand side that the 4 of us are in, and there's 2 people in the waiting room. So we can actually have a conversation that Morris and Gary won't hear, and then we can choose whether to admit them all in one go or whether to admit one at a time, or message them to tell them to wait for longer. So waiting rooms is a key tool to use for security and for management of participants. And Zoom is the only platform that has this feature. Audio controls, very important. Zoom is also the only feature, the only platform where you can mute everybody at the one time or unmute everybody at the one time. And that is very, very important. It's such a simple tool, but so effective. Certainly when you're dealing with classes of 30 or and upper, where you can make sure that everyone's muted, and then you can unmute them individually, or you can unmute all at the one time. So in the first example, you can see that all the participants bar me, the host, are muted. The second example, all the participants are unmuted. And the third example is a mix, where I've unmuted some and muted others. The video controls. So one of the things that you can do is, if someone's video isn't showing and you want to see them, you can ask them to start their video. So that's a nice little tool. So in this case, Shane Dinage, his video is not showing. I've right-clicked on Shane Dinage in my participant list and asked to start video. This is what Shane will see on his computer. The host has asked you to start your video, and click start my video. In terms of video usage, whether you want to see the pupils on the screen or not is entirely up to you. But sometimes for security wise, it's good to know who you're dealing with. And in a corporate environment, it's encouraged that everyone has their videos on. The chat function is another function on the meeting bar, where you can have, the host controls the chat, and you can talk to people in the class at the same, everyone at the same time, or each individually. So you can change the permissions of all the people in the chat, whether they can talk to you or talk to everyone as well. You can change them individually. It's a very good place for Q&A and a very good place to instruct one person if you so wish. So in this instance, Shane Dinage has asked me a question and I've answered him privately. So you can see here that to Shane Dinage only and not everyone in the meeting. You can set up the chat controls so that the participants can chat with nobody. They can chat with you, the host, only. They can chat with everyone in the room, and they can chat with everyone in the room both publicly and privately. So here's an example of that, a message from Shane to me and from me to Shane privately, and then from me to everyone. So this is a typical classroom where you have people mostly muted and with 3 people unmuted. One of the other things that sets apart Zoom from the other platforms is breakout rooms. This is, for me, the best tool from a teaching perspective, because what you can do is you can assign on a pro license up to 20 breakout rooms. So if you have a class of 30, for example, you can go into breakout rooms and assign the 30 participants into 6 rooms. And click automatically, and it will automatically divide your 30 people up into 6 rooms of 5. These breakout rooms, they can't hear each other, but the teacher can go from breakout room to breakout room. They can automatically assign children to a room or manually assign. They can move from room to room, but they can also move the participants from room to room. The teacher can broadcast messages to all the rooms. And a nice feature is that they can set an automatic timer for all to rejoin the main session. This is one of the features that is lacking in things like Google Meet and Cisco WebEx. They don't have the breakout room feature. So in the breakout rooms, you can move all the participants into breakout rooms automatically. You can allow participants to return to the main session at any time. So I would untick this if you want more control. The breakout room closes automatically after 30 minutes, so you don't have to go around from room to room. You can just set some project work. Guys, you have 10 minutes to work out this problem, and then you'll be back in. And you can have a countdown after that 10 minutes of a 60-second timer, so that they can finish up what work they were doing and know that they're going to be returned automatically to the main session. So this, for me, is probably one of the best features of Zoom in an education setting. So this is a typical meeting where I have people, I am the host here, and I have everyone muted except myself. I also have some people with video and some people without. I have one participant who has a profile pic instead of just blank when he doesn't have his video turned on. And I have a comedian up here in the right-hand corner. And you can stop the participants in the class putting up virtual backgrounds. And that's very important that you have that control as well. So this is where I see the participants that are in the room, and this is where my chat is. So it's very manageable. In this instance, then you can pin your video so that you're the main screen and the students are a gallery at the top. Very useful if you want to keep their attention. You can also use a tool called Spotlight Video, which means they only see you and they can't see each other in the gallery at all. And that's probably more of a control tool that you can use to keep everyone's attention. So I've renamed myself the teacher in this case. And what I can do is I can click on any one of the participants and I can unmute them on a quick menu here, a right-click menu. I can stop their video. I can chat directly to them. I can rename them. I can make them the hosts. Let's say if I have a small group and I have to leave, I can make someone the host so that the meeting doesn't end when I leave. I can allow one person to record and I can remove that person as well. And interestingly enough, the waiting room also means I can put them in the waiting room, which does remove them temporarily, and I can readmit them. So it gives you great functionality and great control. And then finally, we're going to look at screen sharing. And I guess this is probably, again, one of the main features of Zoom as a teaching tool. So when you have your classroom set up and how you want to control the audio and the video and the chat and all that sort of stuff, how to actually teach is mostly done by screen sharing. So the most popular things, you can share anything from your desktop or your screen, from any device that you're using. So in this example, these are the windows that I have open on my desktop when I click the share button. So when I click share, I get this window and I can choose. So I work off 2 screens. So I can choose screen 1 or screen 2, which I wouldn't recommend because you could have pop-up windows and messages coming up on your screens and reminders from Outlook and things like that. So I would always individually share a window. so that all the participants are seeing is a window. So for example, all I'm sharing with you guys is the PowerPoint presentation slideshow. You won't have noticed that I've got messages coming up in the right-hand bottom of my screen in internal chats and Teams and Outlook reminders and mails. You won't have noticed that, and I'm trying not to let them distract me. But the PowerPoint presentation is all I'm sharing with you. So I would have chosen that I would have had that open when I click share at the start of this webinar. But here, you not only can you share the content from your screen, but you can also share a whiteboard, which is very interesting, and you can make that interactive. So you can write on that, and then you can give remote control to one of your participants, and they can write back. So there's where the whiteboard function, and also you can share your iPhone or your iPad. And a lot of people like to use their iPad as a teaching tool because they have an iPad stylus pen and they can write out. So one particular teacher contacted me, a physics teacher, and she wanted to write physics problems on her iPad. She didn't like to use the whiteboard because sometimes it's hard to write with the mouse. And I showed her how to just bring her iPhone or her iPad into the meeting. So there's some great sharing tools. So what I'm going to do, the most popular things are PowerPoint presentations, YouTube clips. You can share audio and video, Word documents, and the whiteboard on the iPad. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to share a couple of things just to illustrate how to use the sharing. So I'm going to stop the share here so that you're back to seeing the panel. And I'm going to bring up a different window to share. So let me see. So I'm just going to bring up a PDF. So this PDF, it's fairly relevant to today. It's something I referenced earlier. It's the CPSMA guidance note in relation to video conferencing of board management meetings during the COVID crisis. So you can bring up any document, you can share it, you can scroll down, you can discuss it, and as you'll notice down here, very important, that they are advocating the use of Zoom in their in their guidelines. So that's just one way you can share. That's just a PDF. I'm also going to show you how to share. Let me see here. I'm going to share just a couple of seconds of a video. So this is actually quite an interesting comparison between Zoom and Google Meet, and it just compares the different features.
What I want to talk about, it's kind of the knockout blow for Zoom. It is the bonus features. As you can see here clearly, Google Meet doesn't have any, but Zoom has a couple cool things. It can file share in chat, so you can include actual files in your chat. They also have the really cool ability to take the large group and break them up into smaller groups via breakout rooms. So let's say I have 50 people and I want people to discuss something in groups of 5. I can set that up. They'll be sent out of the main room into the small groups where they'll get to chat until the host shuts it down, then they'll come back together and will reconvene. It's a super neat addition. Also, and perhaps most importantly, is the ability to password protect a room. You can set up a password that the user is required to have in order to enter the room. This is a really big step.
So you can see that you can share out audio. Pretty much anything online with audio you can share out, and it's very effective. And it has features that will enhance the audio as well, and that's again where Zoom comes into its own. Aver kindly shared with me some content that he's been sharing on Zoom. So I'm just going to show you some primary school content as well. So this is a PowerPoint presentation that I'm sharing just with some primary school content. And this is doing some simple sums. Brings me back to my long division. So anything you can do in PowerPoint presentation as teaching to have prepared, you can just share then in the classroom. And this is a wee quiz as well. So guys, just one more thing before we wrap up and we go to questions is just the whiteboard and sharing the whiteboard as a teaching tool. So this is what the whiteboard looks like, and I'm going to write with my mouse. It's very easy to use. Sometimes you don't like actually typing with or drawing with your mouse. You can just use the text tool to drop in any text. You can insert pictures. You can pretty much do whatever you like. And you can also give remote control to one of the class participants, and they can annotate on this whiteboard. You can collaborate with everyone. They can annotate, and then importantly, you can save the whiteboard. So if you've been taking notes, in a staff meeting or something like that, you can have a whiteboard going with bullet points, and you can save and send this to everyone at the one time. Okay, so guys, that's where I'm gonna wrap up. I'm going to hand you over. I'm going to ask Shane, my colleague, to elevate himself onto the panel, and we're going to look at some of the Q&A that's been coming through. I've been again trying not to be too distracted by the questions that have been coming through. There's been some really interesting questions coming through. So Shane's going to talk to us about that. And I'm going to hand you over now.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much. We've really amazing attendance. So we've got some questions that have come through here, and I've been busy answering as many as I can, and I know the rest of the panel have as well. There is some quite good ones here. A lot of people asking about recording of the event and making it available at the end of the session. And yes, there will be a recording available. We do a follow-up email and pop that out to everybody that attended. So if you want to have a look back over this, it'll be available on as a link. We've also got some questions here. Let's see here. Can you show us how to record a lesson and send it out via Aladdin or Zoom later? So it's very easy to record inside in Zoom. You can be on your own, prepare your slides, start to hit the record button, and it will record your audio and your video directly to the cloud. What happens at the end of that is you get a link. The link, then you can paste that link directly into a notice in Aladdin or in Seesaw, for example, and make that announcement to your students. They then select the link, and the video will play of the lesson. Now you can set a password for the video so that only students can view it, or you can decide to have only students that are part of your school environment being able to view it, or you can remove the password if you want it to go out beyond the school. So again, there's restrictions, and you can place watermarks, for example, in the video, so the material can be protected as well. So I'm just going to maybe pop a question. There's
Shane, there's a couple of hands raised in the audience.
Oh yeah, okay, brilliant.
We have Anne-Marie Woods.
Yeah, well, look, we might get a question from Anne-Marie there. I'm going to unmute Anne-Marie's microphone. She's disappeared all of a sudden, so hang on now. I'll see if I've.
Well, she might have put her hand up by mistake.
She might have put her hand up by mistake.
Patrick Gaucher is there, and
yeah, so we bring Patrick up here. So Patrick, I think I'm going to just unmute you there, Patrick. I don't know if you can hear us. Okay, he's let's have a look and see. No, yes, he's unmuted. Hi, Patrick. How are you doing? Yes, how are you?
Hey there, good afternoon. Just a quick question, guys. Just around the waiting room, because I think that was an issue around the security, that we could decide to admit somebody or not admit somebody. Is that an automatic? Is that the default position when you're setting up a Zoom meeting now, or do we have to tick a box there to ensure the waiting room facility kicks in, or is it a default? When you
I can take that, Shane. Yeah, one of the things that Zoom changed, it used not be a default, Patrick, and one of the things that Zoom changed was to make that default. So when any school is set up with an education license, it's going to be on by default.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for that.
You can also make sure at a school level that it can't be changed as well. Okay.
And if you're operating Zoom as, you know, just your own Zoom separate from the school setting, is it across the board set as a default?
You can go into the Zoom portal and go to your settings in there, and if you scroll down to the meeting settings, you'll find to turn on the meeting room, and you have a couple of choices. You can have everybody can hit the meeting room when they're being invited to meetings, and that's the one I like, right? There is another mode where people that are part of your organization will bypass the meeting room, and only people that are third party to your organization get hit with the meeting room. So that's actually an elegant way of sort of allowing your staff to bypass the meeting room. But say, for example, if you have a guest third party to the school and you wanted to bring them in, they would arrive to the meeting room and have to be admitted by the host. So again, you can switch that on the current version, the pro version of Zoom that you have, or on the basic version of Zoom.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much for that.
Thank you.
Cheers,
Thank you,
Patrick.
Patrick. So I have Paddy Mulroe there. I'm going to just hopefully we can hear Paddy. Paddy, you're up. I'm just going to make sure you're unmuted, Patrick or Paddy. I think you should be unmuted there. There we go.
Hear me all right, Dan?
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Lovely, very useful webinar. Thanks a lot. Just a question, when I've been using Zoom a few times, I've noticed with bigger class groups, the quality of the audio and video wasn't as good. Was that just coincidence, or does that happen?
Oh, it's an interesting question. I mean, the thing is, Zoom is excellent at maintaining video and audio when there's bad internet connections. It is, you know, miles ahead of the competition at video quality, but there's also a feature inside in Zoom where you can turn off the audio compression. So if you're doing a music class, for example, you know, and you wanted your students are remote and you wanted to hear their recitals or so forth, you can actually enable the disable the audio compression, and in this way you get a really high quality CD quality audio. Now it does increase the bandwidth, but you know, if you've got reasonable better internet and you want to do that, that's a lovely feature for music students. So, you know, again, the audio quality is dependent on the internet. The default is leave the compression on, but yeah, hopefully that answers the question for you.
Yeah, thanks.
No problem. Thank you, Paddy. So we've got Jared O'Reilly up next. I'm going to just hi Jared, how are you doing? Can you hear us okay?
Hello there, everything
You're
okay?
very welcome.
Thank you very much, and well done. It's an excellent webinar. I just have two questions. The first is on, most students would have signed up to the school's acceptable usage policy. So I'm just wondering, you know, in the light of current developments, do we need to maybe update our AUP and look at the implications regarding GDPR and all that kind of stuff when we're using this kind of tool? And the second question is regarding, I noticed in documents that have come from the Department of Education over the last number of weeks that WebEx is mentioned quite a lot. Just from this webinar, it seems to have much more functionality than WebEx. And I wonder, could you just say a wee bit about that?
I can take the question, the first one, if you want, Leo.
Yep.
And I'll let you take the WebEx question because I wouldn't be qualified to answer that question. But you're absolutely right, Jared. It's a good question on the GDPR piece and the AUP, your AUP policy. I had a look at my one and tweaked it a little bit, to be honest with you. I went back to the Board of Management with it to get it reviewed. But it's something that you do need to look at to make sure that your policy covers you in terms of teaching live lessons or sending recordings to parents. I'm not sure if you're primary or secondary school, but whichever you are, I know if you have Aladdin, you can send home a little note and you can get the parents to give you consent through Aladdin, or you can, as you sign the kids up, to get involved in logging into Zoom, you can get parental consent maybe for it as well. But certainly before you go down this road with Google Classroom or Zoom or anything, I would make sure your AUP policy is up to date. Yeah.
Okay, I can feel the WebEx question, an interesting question. I guess from my presentation, you saw that I didn't really mention WebEx that much. It doesn't even get onto the chart for the Bloomberg survey. But what's interesting about WebEx is we looked at WebEx and we've used WebEx internally in IMS in the past, and we basically wouldn't use it because of the audio and the video, and the number of glitches we came across and the dropping of the calls. So we sort of went past WebEx, and when we found Zoom, we thought it was a far superior product. But in terms of WebEx, it does have some good features. It's good for internal use in a corporate level. What Zoom really offers in the education setting, though, leaves WebEx in its dust in terms of things like breakout rooms. I think breakout rooms is probably one of the best features of Zoom, and WebEx doesn't have anything like that. Also, in terms of meeting passwords, the security element there's no password protection on WebEx meetings. So even those two things in particular. In terms of value for money, then Zoom is cheaper in the long run when people actually pay for Zoom. It's cheaper than WebEx and offers better value for money. And we just found, we looked at Google Meet, we looked at Teams, but for video conferencing and video and audio, we just wouldn't use anything else other than Zoom, you know. But what we would advocate is a mix of use, like Zoom with Microsoft Teams and Zoom with Google Classroom. But yeah, but I think when it comes to WebEx, they all have their features that are good, and I think it's whatever works best for the individual school.
I think a worthwhile mentioning as well, Leo, is the ease of use of Zoom. I mean, WebEx is pretty, you know, it can be tough going as a you know, for somebody. I mean, I had an example of a Polish lady who was teaching a class of 20 students, and they were all 8 years old. In 10 minutes, she was up and running. She had very little English, and she delivered her 2-hour class with Zoom. You know, it's such an easy product to use. The video is excellent, as you mentioned about the breakout rooms. Is not a feature in WebEx, as well as that. You know, the cost of Zoom over the long term, you know, it's at education licensing, it's extremely cost effective, you know, where you know, that is the other side. We're in worth mentioning one more thing as well, is that Eric Wan, the founder of Zoom, used to be head of technology for WebEx, and they weren't listening to him, weren't listening to the ideas. He would sit into meetings after meetings where WebEx had problems, and he decided to leave. They weren't going to invest in the product. He decided to leave, set up Zoom, and now Zoom is, I'd say they're kind of kicking themselves a little bit, but he has brought all of the stuff, first generation, latest, all the faults and flaws of WebEx, you know, have been brought forward into Zoom, and that's why it is the #1 when it comes to video and ease of use. So hopefully that's given some background to it, Jared. Bit of a long answer, anyway.
Yes, thanks very much. That was excellent. I should have bought those shares in January.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. We've got Paddy. We've got Paddy Mulrow there. I'm just going to bring Paddy up.
Paddy's already asked a question.
Was he already on?
Yeah.
We better bring up Norma. Maybe
Norma O'Brien.
We'll bring up Norma. Actually, we'll bring up Norma. Hey Norma, can you hear us, Norma?
How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
Webinar, we actually used it this morning for our Director of Schools meeting, so that was my first time using it, and I can see huge benefits. Can I just check about, are you talking about a specific education version of Zoom now, as opposed to what people will download from their app store? Like if we are getting teachers connected up, and they will have joined up with possibly their work email, I don't know, on the App Store version, will they be able to, is there a difference in that free App Store version and the version that you're talking about for schools?
Yeah, I might take this, guys. The idea of what we're doing here is what IMS is doing is putting together a Zoom platform which will bring all of the education institutions together and applying a license that will cover in a bulk license effectively to cover all of the schools, and in that way we can drive down the price from the standard. A pro license is around 140 euros. That comes down to about 85 when you're buying an education license, but an education license at 85, you have to buy 20 of them to qualify for education. So what we're trying to do is to group the schools together over the next 6 months and offer, get everybody set up with Zoom, bring through all the security, make sure the process is implemented properly, that we've got all of these features turned on at the central account level so that it removes the risk against, a misalignment between schools. Some schools will be stronger than others, which is natural, but bringing through that central security policy, and then switching people to to a permanent situation on the education license. And this is something which can, if all goes to plan, push the price of licensing into single digits, around the €7 or €8 mark per license, and those licenses would be fully enabled for all features turned on, Norma. So it means that if by grouping this or going at this together over the next 6 months, everybody would benefit from doing this and working together with that goal.
Okay,
so I hope that's
my
answered.
staff then should be waiting for me to send them a link to set them up through this educational platform, is what you're saying?
Yeah, you can look, I mean, if we are setting up this process in the background, and we're working as fast as we can to get this set up. So if you've got a basic license, there's no cost for that. If you're on a pro license, you're on a monthly fee, and if you terminate that, you basically get refunded the balance of that month's fee, which is, if it's a single pro account, it's not I think it's about 14 or 15 euros. So it's up to yourself. I mean, you can wait. We will send follow-up emails and activation emails to
what I'm saying
to everybody.
Is it less safe for staff to be using the Zoom that they get from the App Store?
Okay, so obviously with education licensing, there is extra privacy. The privacy policy is beefed up for education. There are certain extra features in around consent and things like that. It's not allowed, anyone under the age of 16 is not allowed to own or to have a Zoom license. However, that is possible when the school, it's part of the school's educational license ecosystem. And maybe Ever would touch on his policy that he's deploying at the moment within the models in regard to the usage policy that you're dealing with.
Yeah, with the pro accounts that we have set them up, we have set them up through IMS, so we didn't have accounts before, Norma, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you're already on an account, I would suggest maybe switching over. It might be the best thing, because all these privacy settings would already be in place for you, and it might be just that little bit more secure maybe, but I'm sure you can drop an email to the boys in IMS and they'll help you out with that,
Thank you.
But in terms of your policy then, like, I would recommend, well, it's only my recommendation, I mean, I'm not who am I to say, but that your AUP policy covers you,
Yeah. Thanks, Shane. Thanks, Aver. We'll never worry about a snow day again anyway.
No.
We might we've got
Thanks,
we've got Terry O'Sullivan up, I think, here next, so I'll just bring up Terry onto the Terry, if you can hear us there.
Hi Shane, can you hear me?
Can indeed. Terry, how are you?
Hi Shane, just to follow up there on Norma's thing, and I'd say, is it just to clarify, can I clarify this, that Norma there, I think, is looking for the free licenses for all her teachers. So obviously after she logging into this webinar, her teachers in her school now will receive a 6-month free pro license. So they'll move from the free package straight away. Isn't that right?
That's
Yeah,
right,
that's
Chair.
right. That's
We
right.
have
Sorry, yeah.
anyone who registered for this webinar will be contacted and we will onboard them and set up their school with Zoom for all their teachers.
Okay, so all the teachers in normal school will receive a free pro license for 6 months.
That's correct, Terry. Yeah.
I think that's what she was worried about there in relation to the security of the free license.
That's spot on, Terry. Yeah, I've got a couple of other questions. I might just come back to, oh yeah, we've got Arla as well coming up, Arla Finnegan. So I'll just bring up Arla there. Hey Arla, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, can indeed. We can hear you
fine.
Thanks
very much, folks. Very informative. I have used this on a small scale in school, and just one of the things you brought up there about the breakout rooms. I do understand that the hosts can go into different breakout rooms, but let's say when you're in one breakout room, are you aware of what's happening in the other ones? My concern would be if there wasn't an adult assigned to each breakout room, you may not be aware what content is being shared, or what content has been shared between children in the different breakout rooms. How do you overcome that?
Can I take that, Shane?
Yeah, go ahead, Leo.
So one way of doing it, if you have a teaching assistant or if you have someone else that you can share responsibility with, you can make them co-hosts and they can go between the breakout rooms as well. If you don't have that facility, then you can stop the participants sharing content. So all they will be able to do is chat. So those sort of controls are there for you. You can also stop their videos if you need be, and if you just want them in to talk about a problem, you can stop all that sort of stuff going on. Yeah.
Can I just add to that, Leo, maybe, and suggest that a really good use for breakout rooms is in terms of your staff meetings or your Crow Park progressions, that you can break your cohort into the specific class categories, your SEND teachers, your middle and senior and junior teachers, and at post-primary your different subject areas. So I think breakout rooms in that respect is a very, very good feature for schools presently.
Yeah, it seems like a very good feature, but I still would have those reservations about the children in the rooms for staff. I wouldn't have, maybe I should have. Thanks very much for clarifying that.
Thanks, Orla.
No problem. We might just pop a poll up here. We've got a poll that get people having a look at this one, right? So there's a poll just run up there. So what use do you see Zoom being used for in your school? And it's multiple choice, so just select. It'd be just interesting to see the trends there on what people are thinking at the moment.
Just in terms of the last question that was asked there to Shane, this may be or may not be useful for teachers. This is a primary school setting, but because I have 3 classes, we'll say, of every level, 3 6th class teachers, 3 5th class, I asked the 3 5th class teachers, for example, and the SET teacher, the 4 teachers, to collaborate when they're doing lessons. So they've only experimented with the videos piece yet, but basically what I've encouraged them to do is that there would be one kind of IT savvy person who would actually run that lesson or run that recording. So in the background, they're managing the waiting room and they're managing all the technology stuff while the other 2 or 3 teachers are concentrating on teaching, if you like, and working through the PowerPoints. But then when it comes to the breakout rooms, that there's actually 4 teachers there to manage those groups. So I don't know if that would add maybe as well that extra bit of kind of security, because you've got 4 teachers collaborating, delivering the one maths lesson or the one Gaeilge lesson, as opposed to each teacher delivering standalone lessons, because they're very much on their own. Whereas when teachers are collaborating, they're much more comfortable about trying this out, basically.
No, absolutely, and you know, it's a very it's very interesting. I mean, just on that point with the breakout rooms, the teacher can move very easily between the breakout rooms. They are able to remove the sharing capability that Leo mentioned, so that there is, you know, you can leave them alone and they're not going to start to share out various content as long as you haven't elevated them to host, and again, or co-host, as Leo mentioned. And also another thing is that if you've got particularly strong individuals in a group, and a very strong group, and you have another weaker group, you can move the students as the host, or the teachers, by the way, amongst the various different breakout rooms, and in that way balance and in, you know, and stoke the quality of the conversation, or to encourage different types of thinking throughout the breakout rooms. But yeah, this is something where Zoom does breakout rooms. It's not available on things like WebEx, it's not available on Teams technology, and it's a fantastic facility that's within Zoom. We're just seeing that the sharing. I'll just share out the results there to everybody. That poll that was run. I know that we've got Tony. I'm promising Tony to bring Tony up now in a minute. Just stand by, Tony. The staff meetings, 88%. So that's really good, because you know, it is a good place to start, is to get Zoom, try your staff meeting. It's a place to practice. It's a place to try out these features, such as the waiting rooms and the breakout rooms. And board of management meetings. Again, lovely feature inside in Zoom under that security button is to lock your meetings. So there's nobody going to Zoom bomb a meeting. When your meeting is locked, you've got passwords for your meeting set up, you've got a waiting room, and you're not, you know, they're just common sense things, and they're all available. And this is really the purpose as well of this webinar, is to straighten out the facts and the fiction, because the world is starting to use Zoom because it's so amazingly easy to use. And as a result, the world sometimes does silly things like sharing out the meeting IDs on social media, not setting passwords, not using waiting rooms, and not retaining control of the sharing functions, literally using Zoom out of the box. And that's what happens, is that we end up with things in the papers and in the press about Zoom. It's not about Zoom, it's about just simple basic user skills. So I'm just going to bring up Tony Bennett here. Tony, hopefully you can hear us. Thanks for standing by there, Tony. You've had your hand up for a while. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, can indeed.
Yeah, brilliant. I know it's excellent presentation so far, so well done to everyone involved. Just a quick question I wrote up in the chat box there. I know we use Teams in our school because it was very much we still own the data, I suppose, control anything that's put up on Teams or anything that's using Microsoft. That's the only how does Zoom compare there? Like who if we put material up on Zoom, do you have a recording on Zoom? Does Zoom own that, or does the school own it, or what's the situation there?
Okay. Well, obviously there's a feature released very shortly with Zoom to allow you to control which data centers the Zoom is going to connect to, and there was some questions around traffic going through China and so forth. So data that is stored, for example, within the GDPR zone of Europe can be specified to store it in the European data centers and be subject to GDPR. Okay. Zoom's terms and conditions are pretty clear about that the ownership of the data is with the account holder, and so we're currently there's, as I say, 90,000 schools across the world engaging with Zoom. We're very focused on the European markets, and we're producing that material for legal test. And but yeah, if you store the data in the cloud, you can rest assured that it is stored within a GDPR zone with the new feature that's coming in the next couple of days with Zoom.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, it's pretty much the same then. That's ideal. That's all I was looking for.
Thanks a million, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Geraldine Dolan there waiting patiently.
Yeah, absolutely. Bring up Geraldine. Hi, Geraldine. Hopefully you can hear us.
Hi guys. I think I pressed that by accident. I just give some positive reinforcement and say, well done, it's great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's the best way to learn things, is to press them by accident. It definitely is it's a good move.
That was the best question so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've Porrick there.
Yeah, no problem. We'll bring up Pádraig. Okay, we got Pádraig up, but Pádraig, can you hear us?
Hi, Pádraig. We can hear him.
We'll let Pádraig get sorted out. We're going to bring up Michelle McHugh as we'll keep Pádraig. Yeah, you're still going to be unmuted, so whenever you're ready, you can pop your question. 1 second, I'll bring up Michelle as well here. So Michelle, can you hear us? Michelle McHugh.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep,
yeah.
Loud and clear.
Hi guys, just want to say thanks. It was a really useful webinar, and I just wanted to inquire if the link that we get for this webinar can be shared with our teachers. I think would be invaluable for them to see how positive this webinar was, and also the fact that Ivar was able to talk about it in his experience in the last 4 weeks, as opposed to somebody who has long-term experience of it. I think would be really worthwhile to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to clarify as well, what this webinar was really aimed at principals and leadership management teams in schools. What we will be doing in the short term, probably at some stage next week, is we will be holding a teacher-specific webinar where we'll get into a little bit more practical detail of how to set up a classroom, how to share content and set the controls up, and also how to record lessons and how to share out in Google Classroom, and how to install the plugin for Teams and stuff like that. So there will be a practical teachers webinar following this as well. But we will send out this recording to all attendees.
Great, thank you. That was great. It was really worthwhile. Couple of hour and a bit.
No problem.
Thank you very much, Michelle.
Thanks, Michelle.
We have Eileen.
I think with Pádraig. Have you got your mic started, Pádraig? Can you hear us? Are you able to hear us? No, I don't think so. I think we'll bring up Eileen here. So, Eileen, can you hear us?
Eve, hello everybody.
Hi.
Hear me? Thank you for this very informative webinar. It's been fantastic. My question is around downloading the video recordings that you do. You know, like if we do, say, Screencastify, you can download them and save them as an MP4 file. Will they always be in the account of, you know, will they always be on the cloud or in the Zoom account, or can they be downloaded and kept for future reference?
Yes, they can be recorded. When they're recorded you have two modes of recording. One, you can record directly to a local computer. Okay. You can also, so you can just hit record and record directly to your PC, or you can say record to the cloud. If it is recorded to the cloud, the advantage is that you can have a sharing link, and the share link then can be pushed out through Aladdin or various other school management systems. But once your storage is, you know, you eventually will build up quite a lot of cloud recordings, and you may want to prune those. So what you can do is you can select the videos and download those into your OneDrive or onto a Google Drive share, or onto a hard drive somewhere, and archive those for future material. So hopefully that answers it. So you are able to download the videos. Including, you know, there is a feature within Zoom that it will transcribe your videos if you wish. So it has a transcription service built into it. So it'll take the audio, run it through a system called Otter AI, and will produce a text file, which is great when you're playing back the videos, because you'll be able to see the transcripts. So hopefully that'll give you, that answers the question. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. I'm just conscious we're coming up to a time, guys. It's now just on 3:30, and it's really amazing. We've still got 123 people on the call here, so which is fantastic. I suppose, is there anything anybody would like to round off with, or?
Just to say, Shane, that we do have, so there has been a number of questions in the Q&A as well that we haven't got around to answering fully. So I think there's over in excess of 30 questions there that we haven't addressed in the written questions. So we will answer those post webinar as well.
I just wonder for Ava, actually, do we have to have parental permission to use Zoom? And just hit that one as Ava. You've been working on stuff like that, have you?
Yeah, well, if that person wants to email their education centre director, maybe, and I can deal with them privately on it. But I have updated my AUP policy, and I have sent it on to an expert there that's a data protection expert on my staff for him to proofread it. And I've also asked the solicitor to look at it for me. One of the unfortunate things here, Shane, from a school's perspective, is that the department have, there's no really guidelines out there as to what an AUP policy should look like for teaching online, which is really, it's unfortunate, I suppose, Whether Zoom needs to be mentioned specifically on it or not, I'm not sure. I think you'd be better off if you had a broad kind of a statement on your policy, just looking for consent to engage with pupils online with parental consent, of course. I think it's the best way to go around it, rather than mentioning Google Classroom or Zoom or Microsoft. I think it might be easier, but certainly you'd need to have it mentioned on your AUP policy that you will be using online forms of teaching and learning and engaging with pupils. Yeah.
Very good. While I have you there, Ava, there's another question about how Zoom and Google Classroom can complement each other. You've been using G Suite, haven't you?
Yeah, they don't like, I know Leo presented there about the fact that Google Classroom, Zoom, you can plug Zoom directly into Microsoft Teams. I don't think that facility is available with Gmail, to be honest. So how we've been using them is basically through the live links. We record, because we have the pro account in Zoom, we can record meetings, or we can record lessons, and we can save those to the cloud, and then we use Gmail and use Aladdin to communicate that. So for example, if I have a meeting with 5th class teachers on Monday morning at 9 o'clock and one of the teachers can't make it, we just record a 30-minute meeting, and we send it by Gmail, send the link out to that staff member. Equally with Aladdin, we just use the links, the recording links, to send them out through Aladdin, or use Aladdin to download the email addresses to add them to Zoom. But as regards plugging Zoom directly into Gmail or G Suite, I don't think that's possible.
No, it's definitely there to complement Google Classroom, and it is done through links. To the best of my knowledge. I guess when you have Teams, the plugin is very, very useful, but it's just bringing links into Google Classroom.
Just Leo, we're probably at a stage now where people are beginning to look at putting on the dinner and looking after the kids and things like that. But I think it's very important there's an evaluation to be filled in before we leave, and I think that information is hugely valuable to us in the Education Centre in terms of putting a structure on our supports going forward and the needs and the requirements that schools have. And I suppose that's one forum of contacting us and communicating with us, but those channels of communication are open in terms of emailing us, phone call to the centre. We're here to help, we're here to support schools. We see this as an opportunity to engage in support for schools. So we're openly saying to all teachers and principals online that we're there, we're open for business, and we'll be more than happy to take on any requests that schools and teachers may have. I suppose the last point for me then just would be the connectedness and the importance of connecting with people during this time. Teaching is a relationship business, and I think there's a great tool for maintaining those relationships, even enhancing those relationships, and showing a genuine and intentful and purposeful interest in people. And so that to me is the biggest benefit of this resource we have here. But just to please engage with that evaluation tool before people begin to head off leaving.
Exactly. Thank you so much. We've still 120 people online, but we're going to call it an end to the meeting, and there will be a recording sent out and a follow-up email with all the information and loads of questions. We've 42 questions answered, plus all the ones we answered live, and 31 more questions still to answer. But much of them are quite similar. So we've done our best, and we thank you so much for joining the webinar. Much appreciated, and thank you to the Education Centres as well for allowing us to do this and organising this with us. So,
Aideen, I think, would like to say a few words.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that we at the Education Centre level are so grateful to the IMS team and to Ava as well, that you've really engaged with us over the last couple of weeks. You've taken everything we've said on board. You've acclimatized and adapted equally as we have, and we really, really appreciate your work over the last couple of weeks. And I suppose as education centres, we are not advocates for one programme over another. However, I do feel through our engagement with you and the team there at IMS, you've really accommodated and looked into what the best needs for the educational context are at the moment, and we really appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Adrian. It's very kind of you. And I'd just like to echo the words of Shane, and also Adrian and David, and thanking Ava for giving up his time to help us out here as well.
Thanks, Ava. As I say, those feedback forms are are absolutely invaluable to us. So please, they will, after the meeting's over, love it if you guys could fill out those, and so that we can learn and understand how to improve our webinars and our education, these webinars, the content of our webinars for future webinars. So again, thank you so much. Have a great day, and we look forward hopefully to seeing you again some stage.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.